and welcome to Sunday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic on a very unusual day here in the UK. Let me show you why. This is what I woke up to this morning. Snow. Now, I know for many of you snow is probably a very common occurrence, but for us, well, certainly where I live, I think the last time I saw snow was about 5 years ago. So, yeah, it was a very unusual morning as a result. Anyway, let's move on to puzzles. What have I got puzzle-wise for you today? Well, we've got the second puzzle in a week by Joseph Nehme. Fast becoming a regular on Cracking the Cryptic, and for good reason. He is consistently producing world-class Sudoku puzzles. This one, I think, has amassed a 97% approval rating on Logic Masters Germany, and it's called The Temple of the Kings. And you can see why. I've copied the highlighting into the grid that Joseph intended, although apparently it's not necessary for the solve, so I might get rid of it in a moment. But basically you can see there's sort of a temple here made out of green. I don't know if this is a swimming pool at the front. I don't know if temples had swimming pools, but yeah, I think you can see what's going on. And the reason it's the Temple of the Kings, well, there's a temple and there's a King's Move constraint today, which I will run you through in just a second. Before we kick off with that, do have a go at Sam Cappleman-Lynes' pure evil classic Sudoku that we've been talking about the last couple of days. If you get stuck on it, and you may do, it's absolutely brutal. We have solved it, or I've solved it for you over on Patreon at the moment. So if you become a patron of the channel, you'll find my video there. It's not a short video, but it does run through some of the advanced techniques you sometimes find in classics. So it might be worthwhile for some of you. Anyway, let's get on with this one. What are the rules? We have got normal Sudoku rules apply. In cages, digits must sum to the small clue given in the top left corner of the cage. Digits cannot repeat within a cage, so completely standard killer Sudoku rules. So that means basically those three squares there have to add to 21 and you can't repeat a digit. Now, two cells separated by a King's Move in chess cannot contain the same digit. So let's talk about that. What does that mean? Let's imagine that square was a 4. That would mean that a chess king could obviously move to all these cells for its next move if it was on this cell here. And that means none of those squares can contain a 4. Now, the eagle-eyed among you will immediately say, well, lots of those cells couldn't have contained a 4 anyway. You're quite right. In fact, the only two cells it affects are these two cells on the diagonal that aren't in the same box. So some people do think of this as a diagonal constraint, a sort of one-cell diagonal constraint. That might be easier, or an easier way to think about it if you don't like to think about the chess implications. But there we go. So let's get rid of the colouring in case that puts me off. And then we'll be able to have a go at solving the puzzle. Do have a go yourselves. The way to play, of course, is to click the link under the video as usual. Oh, actually, before we start, there is something I want to mention about yesterday's video. I did an incredible puzzle yesterday. It was absolutely amazing by Afraid Not. Now, Afraid Not wrote to me today to say that he wanted to to thank Gliperal, the amazing constructor Gliperal. We've done, I think, three of Gliperal's puzzles on the channel. Gliperal is some sort of genius, along with Afraid Not. And anyway, Gliperal was the original person to come up with the idea for that break-in, that amazing break-in in yesterday's puzzle. I won't spoil it for you now by going through it again. But Gliperal has actually, he produced a puzzle, I think, back in October or November last year. It was a 6x6 anti-knight arrow, or squarrow, I should say, Sudoku, which means that the number in the circle of the arrow the square of that number had to be the sum of the numbers on the line. I'll try and remember to put a link to that puzzle under this video in case you want to give it a try, but that was the original sort of seed that gave Afraid Not the idea for the break-in that we did yesterday, and what a break-in it was. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's get on with Joseph's puzzle, and do have a go. As I say, click the link under the video. Now I get to play at last. Let's get cracking and see how we go. Let's see how we go. So we can see there's an 8 cage. I'm getting used to the fact that I'm just, in the early days of Cracking the Cryptic, you'd start a partial killer Sudoku like this, you put a few digits in the grid, you feel good about yourself. Now I'm just used to the fact I won't be able to put a digit in for half an hour. I'm just going to have to stare at it and sweat. Yeah, none of these cages add up to anything useful, do they? These are a bit low, I suppose we can say that. Oh, actually, yeah, okay. So we've got an 18 cage here and a 14 cage. So let's talk about this. You may have heard me say this before, but these yellow cells, if we look at the finished solution to this puzzle, what will these yellow cells add up to? Well, it's one complete box of the Sudoku, so it'll be all of the digits from 1 to 9. We know all of the digits 1 to 9 add up to 45. Well, if I know 6 of those digits add to 22, those 3 squares have got to add up to 23. And there's only one way of doing that in 3 cells, 6, 8 and 9. Right, so now we know the 7 in this box goes in the 14 cage, because it can't possibly go in the 8 cage. And that... don't think we can do anything more with that. Let's look. Where should we look now? We shall look maybe at the top of the temple. Look, we've got a lot of very high numbers coming into... yeah, okay, that's quite interesting. So let's think about box 2. You can see that we've got 2 21 cages poking into box 2. Now, the lowest digit you could ever put in a 21 cage is a 4. And that would mean you'd have to put 4, 8 and 9 into the 21 cage. Well, if you can't put a digit lower than a 4 in any of these cells, because you obviously can't put a 4 in a 14 cage, where did the digits 1, 2 and 3 go in the box? Yep, that's right, only in those cells. So there is a 1, 2, 3 triple in the top row. And one of the 21 cages now has got to have a 4 in it, which means it will be 4, 8, 9, which means one of these 2 cells here will have to be an 8 or a 9. But we don't know which one, which is going to be whichever one of these has the 4 in it. 5 could go in the 14 cage, so that's not going to be as useful. Can we do maths again on this box? We might be able to, so let's use the 45 trick again. We know these 9 cells add up to 45 because they're a complete box of the Sudoku. So, but we also actually know the total of these 11 cells because we've got 3 complete cages. So we've got 21, 35, 56, plus 1 plus 2 plus 3, which is another 6. So that's 62. So 62 for all 11 cells. 45 for these cells means these 2 have to add up to 17, which is a very useful total. That means they are an 8-9 pair. Now the 14 cage must have an 8 or a 9 in it, and that 8 or a 9 can't be there anymore, so it's here. So we get a couple more digits. We've not used our King's Move constraint yet, have we? So maybe that's what I have to do here. So the interesting thing about the King's Move constraint is it's at its most powerful where you're looking at a cell like this, 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 or this, i.e. in the middle of an edge. Because if this is a 6, for example, you now can't put a 6 in the 18 cage anywhere because those 2 are ruled out by the King's Move constraint. That one's ruled out by the Sudoku constraint. But knowing that there's not a 5 or there's not a 6 in the 18 cage, I think is probably not enough for us to do anything with that yet. Right, where do we look now? We've got a lot of high digits in the walls of the temple, look, especially when the 13 cage at the bottom is taken into account. Is that important? What's the maximum you can make 6 cells in the same column add up to? Well, it's 39, because if we make these cells 9, 8, 7, 6, 5 and 4, that adds up to 39. So this cell can't be that low, can it? If that's a 6, let me just think about that. If that's 6, you've got 19. Yeah, that just breaks. This can't be 6. It's got to be higher than 6. 7, 18, 31. That could work if that's 8. No, it can't work because, this is what this is doing. Oh, this is clever. This is clever. Oh, and that's going to create a king's move constraint. Right, look, 7 is not possible in this cell because although I can make these cells add up to 39, the way to make them add up to 39 is these would add up to 18, plus 13 is 31, make this an 8, and you've got 39, which just allows enough room for these 3 squares to add up to 6 to make 45 for the column. But if these 3 yellow squares add up to 6, what do I put in this square? I can't put 1, 2 or 3. So I can't make these 3 squares add up to 6. So this can't be a 7. Now if this can't be a 7, that is really interesting. Because it's an 8 or a 9 and it's seeing its friend here via the king's move constraint. So these can't be the same digit now. So this might break the 8 here. If this is 8, this has to be 9. You've got 17, 26. Yeah, it breaks it. You've got 39 again. So if this is 8, because this can't be 8, it has to be 9. And now look, you've got 17 plus 9, 26, plus 13, 39 again. So these, again, this has no possible value. If this had been available to be an 8, if there was no king's move constraint, this could have been 1, 2 and 4, and there would have been enough room for a little 4 at the top of the grid. But there isn't. So the king's move disambiguates this 8-9 pair and gives us a 9 here and an 8 here. Now hopefully this will work now. So now we've got 16, 24, 37. Oh, we've gained... Oh, right, so we gain 2 degrees of freedom, of course, because we gain 1 from making this bigger, which makes this smaller, and we gain 1 from making this not 9. So we actually don't now know what this is. We know these 3 squares here add up to 8, because 45 minus 37 is 8. Now we know this square, therefore, is a 4 or a 5. We know these 2 squares are 1, 2 or 3. No. Hang on. Where does 9 go in the column? You've got to put 9 in the column somewhere, but it can't repeat in the cage, so it's not in those squares. So the 9 moves into the 13 cage, where it joins its friend the 4, and that means there's a 5 at the top of the grid. That means that these 2 squares have got to be 1 and 2, because we know that these 3 added up to 8. 1. Oh, lovely. 1 can't go there because it breaks the 8 cage because of the king's move. If you put a 1 here, you can't put a 1 in the 8 cage anymore. And the 8 cage must have a 1 in it, so the 2 and the 1 go that way round. That's not a 1 because of the king's move. This 8 cage is now forced to be 1, 3, 4 because you can't put a 2 in it. This is lovely. So this is now 1, 3 and 4. So the 14 cage is now 2, 5, 7. 3, 4. This square, look, can't be a 4. Because if it is, you can't put a 4 in either of those squares because of the king's move constraint. A 4 here would see this square by king's move, so that's not 4. So there's definitely a 4 in one of these 2 cells. These 3 squares are 3, 6 and 7 to complete the column. There's no 9 in the 18 cage now. And that means there's an 8 in it. Because if there isn't an 8 in it, it would have to be 5, 6 and 7. Because if there's no 8 or 9, the only way of getting to 18 is with 5, 6 and 7. And 5, 6, 7 won't work because of this square. We know this square is going to eliminate a 5 or a 6 from this cage. So there's no way it can contain a 5 and a 6. So there is an 8 in here. And the 8 doesn't go there because of the king's move. I wanted to say Kingsman then. I love the film Kingsman, by the way, the first film. For some reason it appeals to my sense of humour, and the fight scene with Colin Firth in the church, one of the greatest scenes in movie history. This square is a 9. What does that mean? This 13 cage? No, that can still be 5, 8 or 6, 7. What are we doing now then? Can we make... What have we got in these 21 cages? We've got a 9 here, so this needs to be 12. Ah, okay, that's cool. This is not 5, 7. Because if we think about the two... Well, there are 3 ways of making 2 cells add up to 12 without repeating a digit. 3, 9, well 3, 9's ruled out, there's already a 9 in the cage. 4, 8, well 4, 8's okay. Or 5, 7. 5, 7 is not okay because of this 2, 5, 7, 14 cage. If you put 5, 7 in there, you have to put 5 and 7 into this cell, which makes it a Schrödinger cell. It has to be 2 digits at the same time. Now that's not allowed in Sudoku. So this is 4, 8. There's an 8 there. So 8, 4. 9, 5. 6, 7. 8 goes here now in this box. 8 goes there in the bottom box. 9 goes here. So actually we're doing all right here. We've got a bit of a start. 1, 3, 4. This can't be 5 at the bottom. 2, 3. These squares now have to add up to 10 to join the 8 in the 18 cage. And we can't use 9 and 8. So we know that these squares are either 6, 4 or 3, 7. But the 6 and the 7 pair there mean that there's a 6, 7 pair here. And this is a 3, 4 pair, which creates a 1, 3, 4 triple in the column. So this square at the top is a 2. 1, 3, 4. So we haven't yet placed 9 and we haven't placed 5. So this is a 5, 9 pair in the middle of the grid. There's probably somewhere. I keep thinking about Knight's moves because the last couple of puzzles I've done on the channel have been Knight's moves constraints. I've got to get out of the habit of that or I'm going to come a cropper very quickly. Now, okay. Oh, I can use the same wall trick presumably down this side of the grid. Let's look at that. Yeah. Yes, okay, this is exactly the same, except that there's less of a Knight's move restriction between, sorry, a King's move restriction, a Kingsman restriction between these 2 squares, because obviously they don't see each other. This is a Tigger bounce rather than a Kingsman move. So if this square is not 9, let's say this was 8, is that going to break? We've got 17, 26, yeah, it breaks, that's 39 again. Which means this square would have no value. So this has to be 9. We've got 16, 25, 38. These 3 now add up to 7, which just gives enough room for this little square here to poke between the 1, 2, 3 and the 5 and be a 4. This 1 fixes the 2, that fixes the 1 here. This 1 is huge because it plonks a 1 in there. There's now a 1 down there. Don't use the Knight's move constraint to disambiguate it. What else have we got? Have we got anything more? We've got... I'm sure we've got more. I've just got to work out what we've got here. We've got... It's really easy to miss one of these Kingsman constraints. Keep looking at this 3, 4 and thinking it does things there, but I don't think it does. So what else have we got? We've got this column. We've not put... Right, where does 3 go in this column? It can't go in the 13 cage, so it's got to go in here. That's not actually that helpful, I think, because we've got... Yeah, so whatever we put in the 13 cage, we'll put the other version of the 13 in the 25 cage. So... Oh dear, I think maybe I've got to look at these 10 cages then. I've not looked at these yet. Doesn't seem likely though that that's going to yield much fruit, I have to say. Let's have a look at this one. This can be... Well, if it's a low digit, it can only be 1 or 3. Oh, it can't be 1, because a 1 here would put a 9 here, and that will clash. So if it's a low digit, this is a 3, this is a 7. If it's a high digit, it can't be 8 or 9, so it has to be 6 or 7. Which means this has to be 3 or 4. It can't be 3, we've just put the 3 in there, so it's not 3, which means that's not 7. So actually this is more restricted than I was thinking. Yes, look. Row 4, that is a quadruple, I think. 3, 4, 6 and 7. Which means this can't be a 3. And we need 1, 2, 5. Look, we need 1, 2 and 5 to complete the row, but there's a 1 and a 2 already in column 7, so that square is a 5. These two squares are 1 and 2. 5 here means the 13 cage now is a 6-7 pair. And if it's a 6-7 pair, that's beautiful, because you can't now put 7 into these squares. Because if you try and put a 7 into either of these squares, it rules 7 out of both of those squares because of the Kingsman constraint. So we can't do that. There's no 7 in here. This square becomes a 7. This becomes 2, 5, which doesn't seem to do anything. The 7 fixes the 7 and the 6 sort of... Oops. This 7 backfires into this cage, fixes those in that order. We've now got sort of a deadly pattern on 6s and 7s, which of course isn't really deadly, it just looks it at first blush. But look, this 6-7 pair means these two squares are a 6-7. And this square can't be a 7 because that will put a 3 here on the other side of the 10 cage, which will clash. So that's a 6, that's a 7, that's a 4. 4 goes there by Sudoku, look, because we've got 4s and 4s here. 6 has got to be in one of those two positions. This can't be a 7 because of the Kingsman constraint. These two squares have got to be 5 and 8. That means... What does it mean? We should be able to get these squares. What are these? 3 and... these are 3 and 8 now. To complete the column. Don't use the Knight's Move constraint there. Sorry, I keep thinking about the Knight's Move constraint. Now, have we unlocked the puzzle? 9 has to live in the bottom corner of the grid there, look. What do we do next? Is it Sudoku? 1, yeah, look, we can plonk 1 into the grid here. That plonks a 2 here. That makes this square a 1, this square a 1. Does that help us? 2s, 2s. That means these two squares are a 2-9 pair now. So these squares here are a 3-4 pair. I'm sure that matters for some reason, but I can't see what that reason is. Now, this 9 here plonks a 9 in there. That means this square's a 5. 5, 5. 5's got to be in one of these two squares. This row looks a little bit cluttered. We've got to... Oh, 2, look. 2's up there. Force a 2 into one of those squares. That... I'm not sure if that matters. I can't see how it matters. Where are we looking for the next digit? I don't know is the answer. What do we need? Oh, I suppose we've got quite a lot of digits in this box. I've not got 2, 5 and 8 into these squares. But this square sees a 2 by 9 Kingsman move, sees a 5 by Sudoku, so that square's an 8. That sees the 8 and the 3 over there. Oh, this square now has become a 6 by Sudoku. That locks a 6 out of these squares, which is rather interesting for this cell. Let's just put the 2, 5 in here so I don't forget to do it. 2's now in one of these cells. Yeah, let's come back to... Sorry, let me just double check. I've got an 8 down here as well now. I'm trying desperately hard not to miss the obvious, but I'm sure I'm doing that. Now look, this 3-7 pair, if this is a 3, you can't put 3 in either of these cells because of the Kingsman constraint. So this becomes a 4, which means that's a 6. That 4 sees the 4 and the 3 at the bottom of the grid. It sees the 7 on this side, which plonks the 7 and the 3 into those squares. That 10 cage now gets resolved. By Sudoku, this square's become a 3. I've got to put a 3 in box 7. It goes here. The 3 and the 4 go in. The 4 and the 9 go in. The 9 and the 2 go in. The 2 and the 5 go in. Good grief. The 5 and the 8 go in. The 5 and the 2 go in. This is one of the great runs ever. Wow. Okay, well now there's a 6 in one of those squares, which sorts the 6 and the 7 out. There's now a 7 here by Sudoku. These squares here are 7 and 9. We can do them. 7 and 9 go in. This square's an 8 by Sudoku. That fixes the 8 and the 5. Keep going. 5 and the 6 get done. This square's a 6 by Sudoku. Those squares need a 1 in them. And a 4. The 4 over here helps us out. 4 and 1 go in. That's a 1-3 pair. That looks a bit deadly like. This is a 2. And this square is a 7. And that looks good. Now, oh, I see. Right, look. We get this little deadly pattern here, which is resolved by the fact that there is a 3 here. And by Kingsman, that square can't be a 3. So the 1s go like that. The 3s go like that. And we click check. And that is how to solve another lovely puzzle by Joseph. Really stunning. It's just elegance again, isn't it? Really enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments how you got on with it. I hope that you enjoyed it just a scintilla as much as I did. Well, actually more than a scintilla. But I hope you reached at least the level of scintilla. And we'll be back later, of course, with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.